3 spine-chilling, sinister home alone encounters that reveal haunted secrets you never knew. The blood-curdling stories of the past echo deep within the walls of a seemingly quiet suburban home. Sarah, a single mother and dedicated nurse, clutched her aching head as she stumbled through the door after another grueling night shift. The sun dipped low, casting eerie shadows that danced on the walls. This was supposed to be a safe haven for her 2 young children, Ellie and Jake, while their father was away. But tonight, the silence felt heavy, pulsating as if something awaited them in the dark. As she tucked Ellie, her wide-eyed daughter, into bed, she felt a strange prickling sensation inching down her spine. The rhythmic creaks of the house, once a source of comfort, now morphed into unsettling whispers, leaving her heart racing. She inhaled sharply when Jake whispered from the corner, "Mommy, I heard something in the basement." Panic fluttered in her chest. "It's just the house settling," she assured him, though she could feel unease pooling in the pit of her stomach. Moments later, Ellie trembled beneath her covers and whispered of a shadow darting past her bedroom door. Fear gripped Sarah's heart like a vice. Ignoring the chill creeping through her bones, she resolved to confront whatever lurked below, armed only with a flashlight. The basement door loomed ominously, its wooden frame splintered, as she descended the creaking stairs. The stale air clung like cobwebs to her skin. Once at the bottom, darkness swallowed her whole. The scratching noises grew louder, morphing into ghostly murmurs that seemed to caress her ears. Was it her imagination, or did the house tremble with an unmistakable tension? Trembling, she retreated, glancing nervously back at her children's room. The atmosphere thickened with dread. Windows rattled, as if a storm raged just outside, yet the sky was clear. The lights flickered and buzzed in chaotic bursts, spiking the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Desperate to understand, Sarah stumbled upon an old journal tucked beneath the staircase, its pages yellowed with time. The frantic scrawl revealed a grim history connected to their neighbor, Mr. Callahan. Once revered, the man had vanished after a series of tragedies tore through his family. The journal hinted at dark rituals, survival, and insidious attachments. Her skin prickled as the words embedded in her mind. Before she could catch her breath, a knock echoed against her front door. Heart pounding, she swung it open to find Mr. Callahan standing there, eyes glinting with an unnerving welcome. His smile felt wrong, twisted somehow, as he offered hollow reassurances. Something in the way he looked at Ellie and Jake sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. Just as she reached for her phone to call the police, something stopped her. The local authorities had been turning a blind eye to Callahan's eccentricities, leaving her feeling unmoored in disbelief and horror. Creeping doubts mingled with the gathering shadows as her children, drawn inexplicably toward him, edged closer, their trust in her beginning to slip away. "Come play outside with me," Mr. Callahan coaxed, his tone dripping with unsettling charm. Sarah's heart thundered in her chest. She was their protector, but could she fight against a darkness that seemed to encircle them like suffocating fog? "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Get away from them," Sarah shouted, her voice breaking the spell, as her heart raced. The air felt electric, tension crackling like a live wire. Just when she thought she had regained control, a wind howled through the corridors, shaking the house to its very foundations. Shadows flickered across walls, twisting and morphing, until she realized this man wasn't just her neighbor, he was a vessel of something far darker. Desperation coursed through her veins. As she struggled to drag her children back, they turned to Callahan, eyes clouded with a trance-like trust, inching ever closer. Had they unwittingly formed a bond with someone who posed a grave threat? In that moment, Sarah's world teetered on the brink of terror, leaving her with one piercing question: Who in this quaint neighborhood could truly be trusted? Run! Sarah's voice tore through the thick atmosphere, pulling Ellie and Jake back from their mesmerized state. Fear surged within her like molten lava. This was no ordinary man standing at her doorstep. He radiated a darkness that whispered promises too sinister to comprehend. With a frantic tug, she yanked Jake's arm, forcing him backward while Ellie, still wide-eyed, clung to her mother's side. Shadows clawed at the edges of her vision, the dusk closing in like a predator stalking its prey. Mr. Callahan's smile twisted, morphing into something primal, something not quite human. "Why are you being so rude?" he said, his voice low and smooth like oil. "I just wanted to help them. They're so lonely." Those words slithered into Sarah's mind, igniting a blaze of panic. She felt trapped, as if walls were closing in around her. Thoughts raced, she had to protect her children at all costs. "Close the door. Now!" she barked, forcing Jake to step back further. As she slammed the door shut, a violent wind whipped through the cracks, rattling frames and shattering the uneasy silence. The eerie calm that had settled upon them shattered into chaos. The lights flickered wildly, casting monstrous silhouettes against the walls. She leaned against the door, heart pounding as her eyes darted through the darkness of the house. "Mommy, who was that?" Ellie squeaked, her voice quivering with confusion and fear. Sarah pulled them close, scanning their faces for signs of harm. "Just a strange man. We're safe now," she lied, though doubt trickled in like cold rain. As she reassured them, a knock echoed once more, slicing through the tension. This time, it sounded different, urgent, demanding. "Sarah," Callahan called from outside, voice layered with mock concern. "Are you sure the children are safe in there? You wouldn't want anything bad to happen, would you?" A shiver crept down Sarah's spine. She glanced at the window, where darkness pressed against the glass, opaque and foreboding. "What do you want?" she shouted, forcing steadiness into her quaking voice. "Just a little chat. The kids are tired of being cooped up. They need fresh air, and I want to show them something special." His tone dropped into a deep, hypnotic murmur. Every word dripped with honeyed malice. Sarah felt Ellie shudder against her, the innocence almost palpable, fraying at the edges by the moment. Without realizing, her children were drifting toward the window. "Stay back!" Sarah barked, yanking them away. In that instant, she heard a soft growl that drifted through the walls, an echo of something ancient and hungry. Fear coiled tightly around her chest. The house had shifted, transformed into a living entity, treacherous and unyielding. Each creak of the floor, each whisper of wind, felt like a warning note played on a string of dread. "Let me in, Sarah," Callahan insisted, his voice now a serrated edge. "You don't want to disobey me. It's all in your best interest." Desperation clawed at her throat. The memories of warnings from neighbors resurfaced, tales of strange noises, of shadows that moved in the dark. Her instincts screamed, this man was dangerous. The pounding on the door intensified. "If you don't let me in, your precious children will suffer," he threatened, panic ignited inside her. Her mind raced to the basement, the journal, the clues she had found. Was Callahan connected to those rituals? Was he using her children as pawns? "Ellie, Jake, listen to me," Sarah whispered urgently, her heart pounding like a drum. "We need to get ready to leave. Now." Their wide eyes reflected the fear that coursed through her. She could feel time slipping every second, a heartbeat closer to something terrible. Would she be able to escape the darkness enveloping her home? As the tremors in her hands betrayed her resolve, she knew she had to confront Callahan before he consumed her family whole. But how does one fight a shadow with teeth? And just as she turned toward the hallway, an anguished wail erupted from the basement, slicing through the mounting terror. What waited for them below? The echo of the wail reverberated in Sarah's chest, igniting a primal fear that made her freeze. She had heard that sound before, a tortured cry that resonated with despair and anguish, but now it felt different, more urgent, more alive. "Mommy!" Jake whimpered, hiding his face against her leg, his small body shaking with fear. Ellie's eyes were wide, brimming with tears that threatened to spill over. Sarah dropped to her knees, gripping their arms tightly. "We have to stick together. Do you understand?" She scanned their faces, forcing herself to remain calm, even as panic roared inside her. "Nobody's going to hurt us," she assured them, but even as she spoke, doubt seeped into her words. Callahan's voice lingered in her mind, his promises danced like shadows in the corners of the room. "I want to help," the growl returned, rumbling through the floorboards, reverberating against her very bones. It was as if the house were alive, and it was hungry. "Come on," she urged, pulling her kids towards the hallway that led to the basement door. The air thickened, each breath steeped in dread. The basement felt like a gaping mouth, ready to swallow her whole. "Mom, what if it's a monster?" Ellie's small voice broke through the suffocating tension, the innocence of a child clashing with the grim reality they faced. "We have to check," Sarah replied, her voice steadier than she felt. "If someone's down there, if it's hurt, we can't leave it. We can't." An unfounded conviction spilled from her lips, even as her own heart raced with fear. With trembling hands, she reached for the cold metal of the doorknob. It felt wrong, as though it were pulsing with a life of its own. The kids huddled closer to her, and she could feel their tiny bodies trembling against hers, fear transmitting silently like an electric shock. "On three," she whispered, though her throat was dry. 1, 2. The basement door creaked open with an agonizing slowness, revealing a staircase that spiraled down into darkness. Shadows danced along the walls, flickering in the dim light. Every instinct screamed for her to turn back, but she pushed forward, heart pounding louder than the growls that seemed to echo within the confined space. Suddenly, a gust of cold air rushed up from the basement, engulfing them like a thick fog. Sarah shivered as the temperature plummeted, and the wail morphed into a low growl, more feral now, deep and resonant. "What is that?" Jake begged, his voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," she replied honestly, her mind racing. If Mr. Callahan had anything to do with this creature, this wretched thing in her basement, they had to find a way to escape. A faint flicker of light emerged at the bottom of the stairs, a candle, its flame wavering like a heartbeat, beckoning her into the abyss. "Elijah." The voice was raspy and ash-laden, breaking through the growls. It was unexpected, familiar in a way that sent chills racing down her spine. "Mommy," Ellie pleaded, her grip tightening. But Sarah felt trapped, both by her fear and the inexplicable curiosity that pulled at her. "We have to see. We need to know what's happening." The children's eyes widened in fear, and Sarah glanced back at the front door. Callahan could return any moment. Without another word, she advanced down the staircase, lighting the path before her. Each step echoed in rhythm with her heartbeat, a slow drumroll to the unknown. What awaited them below? And as the door creaked open completely past the threshold of light, a distorted figure gripped the darkness, hollow and starved. The dark whispered back, what had she awakened? The shadows melted into grotesque shapes as Sarah stepped into the basement, her breath caught in her throat. The flickering candlelight illuminated the corner, and there it was, a figure hunched and trembling, its skin stretched taut over skeletal features. It looked up, and as recognition flickered in its hollow eyes, a chill swept through Sarah's veins. "Elijah!" she gasped, her voice breaking. But the child before her wasn't the son she remembered. This was a past version, a specter from a nightmare that gnawed at her heart. "Is it really you?" The creature leaned closer, its lips trembling, revealing a mouth filled with jagged teeth. "Help me," it rasped. The basement walls seemed to shudder around them, echoing with anguished whispers. Her heart pounded in her ears, drowning out the world above. Is it you?" Jake's voice quaked, pressing against her leg as if he could shield them both. Ellie's small fingers dug into Sarah's arm, her eyes wide and frightened. "Stay back," Sarah warned, instinctively moving to shield her children. But the wretched thing before her relentlessly drew her in. It looked like Elijah, but there was something else, something wrong. "It hurts," it hissed, a low growl rumbling from its throat. The candle's light flickered violently as though it could sense the dread, casting monstrous shadows on the walls that reached out like grasping hands. "Mom, we have to go," Ellie cried, her voice trembling. The darkness around them felt thicker, the air rippling with the weight of ancient terrors. "No. We can't leave him," Sarah shouted, but her conviction wavered. Something twisted in the depths of her heart, filling her with an unsettling dread. "Elijah, why are you like this?" Tears brimmed in her eyes, blurring the twisted reflection of her son. "Mommy," the creature choked out, but the voice was not his, not anymore. It was heavier, drowning in sorrow and desperation. "It wants us, all of us." The growl surged once more, louder now, vibrating through the very floor they stood. The basement seemed to pulse, the walls closing in like a maw closing on a prey, squeezing the light right out of the room. "What wants us?" Sarah shouted above the growing noise, panic crashing like waves in her chest. She feared the answer, yet she needed to know. It was coming for them. It was in the shadows, lurking, growing bolder. The figure of her son Elijah morphed further, the hunger in its eyes deepening. She glanced behind to see the door and escape. But would they make it? Thoughts crashed against her mind like a storm. Could they risk leaving Elijah-like creature behind? It might let them go, or it might. A clawed hand shot up from the ground, snatching the air as another guttural wail echoed. Something deeper, darker was waking, feeding off their fear. "Mommy, please!" Jake shrieked, his small voice piercing the terrible cacophony as the shadows drew nearer. "Run!" In that moment of horror, Sarah seized both children, turning away from the aberration of her son. They bolted up the stairs, the air growing thick and suffocating. She felt the darkness clawing at the hem of her shirt, hungry to drag them back into the abyss. Just as they reached the door, the growl morphed into a scream that shook the very foundation of the house. And then silence fell. Heart racing, Sarah burst out into the living room, her pulse echoing in her ears. The air felt different now, it was sweeter, free. But what had they left behind? "Mom!" Jake whimpered, peering back toward the basement door, dread clawing at his features. As Sarah turned to comfort him, she met Ellie's gaze, a shadow of something dark stirring behind her innocent expression. "Mommy, what if it comes back for us?" Panic seized Sarah. With the door still ajar, she could feel the pull of the unknown behind her. What had followed them out? What would they have to confront next? But something answered from the shadows, a whisper curling around her mind like smoke. "You invited it, now it's here." And as the final, bone-chilling growl echoed through the house, Sarah's stomach twisted in dread, knowing the darkness was far from finished with them. What price would they pay for their escape? The silence hung heavy, clinging to Sarah like a wet blanket. Her heart drummed a frantic rhythm, drowning out the rustling in the shadows. The air had the sickly sweet smell of decay, reminding her how fragile their freedom might be. "Mommy, it was here I felt it," Jake whispered, eyes wide like saucers, searching the room for safety. Ellie's fingers curled around Sarah's sleeve, their grip tight with dread. They had escaped the basement, but at what cost? The threat felt ever present, a ghost weaving through their skin. Sarah swallowed hard, her throat dry. "It won't find us here," she lied. "We just need to don't say its name." Ellie interrupted, her voice a desperate hiss. "Please, Mommy, don't." It was as if saying it would make the nightmare return to life, and Sarah felt the fear rise up in her throat. They had to move. The house felt wrong now, the walls pulsating like a living entity with their own heartbeat. "Come on. We need to check the windows. We have to see if it followed us," she urged, leading the children towards the living room window. The curtains hung heavy, blocking out the dim evening light. As they pulled them back, the street outside was shrouded in eerie calm, as if the world had paused. But Sarah's senses screamed off-key, an instinct telling her that something was out of place. "Mom!" Jake trembled, pointing outside. A figure stood at the end of the driveway, half hidden in the shadow of the trees. Sarah squinted, heart tightening. It looked like Elijah, or what was left of him, standing still and waiting. "No, Jake," she breathed, shaking her head slowly in disbelief. "That's not him." But as she turned back to her children, a flicker of movement caught her eye. Ellie was staring, transfixed. "Mommy, he wants us." He's calling to me, Ellie, no." Sarah yanked her away. The window felt like a sponge, soaking in darkness. "Mom! We can't leave him," Jake added, pulling at Sarah's arm. "I said no." Panic surged through her, pushing her to a frenzied decision. "We have to get away. We have to get to the car." But the moment they turned toward the door, the air shifted. A cold draft rolled in, snaking around them like a predator ready to pounce. Sarah felt her breath quicken. She was acutely aware that they were not alone. The lights flickered, casting shadows that lashed out like tendrils. An urge to flee tore through her, but the weight of the darkness pressed deep into her bones. Then came the sound, a low, raspy growl emanating from the shadows, curling closer with every heartbeat. She spun back to the window, dread rooting her in place. The figure outside had moved, now leaning forward, its face obscured but somehow familiar. "Mommy," Ellie whispered, her tiny voice trembling. Suddenly, the front door slammed shut with bone-rattling force, echoing like a death knell in their ears. "Enough! You can't scare us like this!" Sarah shouted, defiance bubbling through her fear. She felt the energy shift, the air vibrating with something beyond human. But inside, she quivered. Then, right in front of them, a bright light flickered on across the room. It revealed an outline in the corner, watching, waiting. The figure seemed to swell and thin, a grotesque imitation of Elijah merging with shadow. "Come play with us," it taunted, its voice a twisted version of her son's, reverberating through the house like a living echo. "Run!" Sarah screamed, but it felt futile. The walls felt like they were closing in around them. As they turned to escape through the back door, Sarah caught a reflection in the hallway mirror, a fleeting glimpse of something terrible lurking behind her, an understanding that they had not escaped. "Mom!" Jake cried as he tugged at her wrist. "It's right behind you." The shadows surged forward, a wave of darkness ready to engulf them. Despair rushed in as Sarah's mind raced. She had to protect her children, but at what cost? The ground trembled as the darkness closed in, whispering secrets long buried. Who would they have to become to survive this? Sarah dashed for the kitchen door, feeling a cold breath on her neck. What new horrors waited just beyond the thin veneer of the world they had known? With a final push, she swung the door open into the night, the chill biting at their skin, and the shadows shrieked behind them. What would they find out there in the dark? The night was alive, and now it was hungry. Sarah burst through the kitchen door, the night swallowing her scream as she stumbled onto the cracked pavement of their driveway. A wide expanse of darkness sprawled in front of her, an abyss that felt eager to pull them back into the nightmare. She could hear Ellie and Jake panting behind her, their small hearts racing in unison with her own. "Go! Go!" Sarah urged, leading them toward the car, its headlights casting weak beams against the creeping dark. But the front tires sank in the gravel, half buried beneath fallen leaves, offering no sanctuary. Panic surged, clawing at her throat. "Mommy, I don't want to die," Jake cried, eyes glistening with tears. "Shoo. We're not going to die," she replied, clenching her jaw as her eyes scanned the shadows creeping in around them. "Just stay close." They were exposed now, the thick trees looming like sentinels watching them, and unease bloomed in the pit of her stomach. Something was out there, lurking just beyond the reach of their light. The memory of the figure from the window pulsed in her mind. Where do we go? Ellie's voice cracked, barely a whisper but filled with a desperate urgency. Anywhere but here, Sarah replied, darting her gaze around the landscape, heart racing with every rustle of a leaf or snap of a branch. Then, from the depths of the woods, a low moan pierced through the night, chilling her to the core. It was joined by another, reverberating in a sickening harmony, like a symphony of the lost echoing in her ears. "Mommy, it's coming!" Jake whimpered. "No!" she snapped, forcing the dread out of her voice. "It's just the wind. We need to keep moving." She gripped their hands tightly, a fragile lifeline against the terror pressing down on them. Turning towards the road, she spotted the neighbor's house, a glimmer of hope in a sea of despair. It was distant, perilous, yet it glimmered like a beacon. "We can make it there." Just as she began to lead her children forward, a sinister laugh erupted from the forest, echoing around them. Sarah froze. It was not just a sound, it was a taunt, an invitation into the heart of darkness. "Mommy!" Ellie screamed, pulling back, eyes wide with fear. "I don't want to go." The lights flickered above them, casting long, clawing shadows that danced across their faces, weaving in and out of view. "It's okay. Just follow me," Sarah urged, but her voice trembled, betraying her own fear. Without warning, the ground shook, the ominous presence filled the air, choking in its intensity. A silhouette darted past them, obscured by the trees. "Run!" she shouted, instinct taking over, as she gripped Ellie's hand and yanked Jake forward. They bolted, heartbeats pounding a desperate rhythm as they sprinted toward the haven of the neighbor's house. But every step felt heavier, as if the ground itself pulled them back, demanding they return. Just then, Ellie stumbled, her small form twisting awkwardly. "Mommy, wait!" she cried, falling to her knees. As Sarah bent to help her up, she caught a sliver of movement in her periphery. The figure was back, and closer than ever, its features sharpening into focus, a grotesque mimicry of Elijah, twisting and grinning in the dark. "No!" Sarah cried out, horror rooting her to the ground. Ellie's eyes darted between her brother and the figure. "Mommy, what's wrong? Get up!" Sarah urged, panic clawing through her voice. "It's not him. It's not him." But fear wrapped around Ellie's heart, freezing her obedient spirit. Suddenly, the shadows lunged forward, reaching out with skeletal fingers, grasping for the children. Sarah screamed, tugging Ellie to her feet just as the tendrils brushed her skin, cold and biting. The chill seeped deep, wrapping around her heart as she shoved her kids ahead. "Run! Get inside!" Jake screamed, but Sarah's ears were filled with the sound of cracking branches and the haunting familiar laughter echoing from all sides. They stumbled toward the neighbor's door, the threshold a lifeline in a world gone mad. But with sudden terror, she realized the door trembled as if something pushed from the other side. Could safety truly exist anymore, or was the night merely biding its time, waiting for them to venture too deep? What would they unveil behind those heavy walls? The door rattled violently, a low groan resonating through the air like a warning. Sarah's stomach dropped, the world narrowing around her, focusing on the menacing noise. "Ellie, Jake, stay back." She shoved her body against the door, heart racing, as if sheer will could keep whatever was pounding inside from breaking free. "It's locked, Mommy." Jake squeaked, his voice trembling. Oh God," Sarah muttered. The edges of her vision smudged black, the night closing in. She turned her head slightly, just enough to check on her children. Ellie was visibly shaking, her face stained with tears. Fear wrapped around their small figures like barbed wire. "Is it?" Ellie started, but her voice caught in her throat. "Sure," Sarah whispered, her eyes glued to the door as another heavy thud echoed from within. "Just a few more steps, we can get in." The laughter from the darkness morphed into a cacophony of whispers. Sarah craned her neck, desperate for clarity in the chaos. It felt as if the trees surrounding them were alive, their branches twisting into gnarled fingers, pointing toward the door. "Mommy, I'm scared," Jake cried, clutching Ellie tightly. She could feel their tiny hearts thumping wildly against her sides. Then, all at once, a deafening crash reverberated through the air, the sound of wood splintering and metal screaming. The door buckled under the force, and Sarah stumbled back, pulling her children away from the chaos. "Run," she urged, though the word barely escaped her lips, swallowed by terror. The once distant sounds now filled the air. Animalistic growls emerged from the shadows, mixing with the haunting laughter of the figure lurking behind them. She turned, tugging on her kids. "We can't go back. We have to find another way." Glancing frantically, she spotted the trees lining the property like black giants. "Into the woods?" Ellie asked, voice choked. "Yes." Sarah stammered, fierce determination pulling her forward. The woods were dark and full of unknowns, yet they offered the possibility of escape, a flicker of hope amidst despair. They darted into the dark thicket, branches clawing at their clothes like desperate fingers. It didn't take long for the darkness to swallow them whole, leaving only the sound of their harsh breaths echoing back. The oppressive atmosphere weighed upon them, but Sarah pushed forward, her motherly instinct aflame. The laughter echoed now, but more sinister, as if it was playing with them, teasing their fear. It swirled around them, a mocking wind. "Mommy!" Jake trembled, his voice barely above a whisper. "Quiet," Sarah hissed. She halted, straining to listen. The growls were closer now, the shadows flickering, dancing along the ground. In her gut, she knew they were being hunted. They kept moving, feet crunching on leaves and twigs, the sound a reminder of how vulnerable they were. Sarah dared not whisper a word of reassurance, she feared jinxing them. Suddenly, a sharp yelp pierced through the night. "Mommy!" Ellie screamed, as something wrapped around her ankle, yanking her backward. "Ellie!" A surge of adrenaline propelled Sarah forward as she dropped to grab her daughter. The darkness loomed larger, the air thickening. She could feel the presence, a chilling anticipation, closing in on them. With frantic hands, Sarah tried to free Ellie from whatever had sunk its claws into her. "Hold on. I want to let go." But from the depths of the shadows, two glowing eyes appeared, watching them. They were no longer in control of their fate. What sat hidden in those woods? And what had come looking for them, waiting to claim them as part of its dark symphony? Sarah's heart raced, her mind a chaotic storm. The darkness loomed around them like a living thing, entities unseen yet very much felt. She felt the grip of panic clawing at her insides as she wrestled with Ellie's ankle, desperate to free her daughter from whatever had taken hold. "Mommy, please!" Ellie whimpered, her eyes wide with terror. "Just a little more," Sarah urged, her voice cracking as she felt the cold tendrils of dread wrap tighter around them. With a sudden jerk, she managed to pull Ellie free. They tumbled backward, collapsing onto the forest floor, leaves crunching beneath them. But as they scrambled to their feet, a spine-chilling laugh erupted from the shadows, echoing malevolently through the trees. Jake clung to Sarah's side, his breath hitching as he scanned the darkness. "What was that? What was it?" "I don't know. We have to keep moving," she replied, forcing her legs to carry her forward despite the weight of fear that threatened to pin her down. They rushed deeper into the woods, weaving past trees that seemed to encroach upon them, their branches twisting like skeletal arms reaching for the warmth of life. Each snapping twig beneath their feet felt like a countdown. Time was slipping away, and the forest was a cruel, unrelenting mausoleum. Whispers filled the air, soft and malevolent, mingling with the wild rustle of leaves. "You can't hide," they seemed to hiss, chilling her to the bone. Sarah's mind raced. What was pursuing them? A predator, toying with its prey? "What do we do, Mommy?" Ellie asked, her voice trembling. "Stay close," Sarah replied, forcing calm into her tone, though her heart drummed like a wild animal in her chest. They stumbled upon a narrow path, overgrown but inviting in its promise. "This way," Sarah urged, steering her children onto it. But as they moved, the laughter returned, louder and more malicious, wrapping around them, binding their fate in the clutches of darkness. Suddenly, the path opened into a small clearing, illuminated only by the faint, sickly glow of the moon. The air felt thicker, heavy with an unspeakable dread. Barely breathing, they paused, scanning their surroundings. It was then they noticed the stones, arranged in a pattern, oddly symmetrical and unnaturally cold. "What is this place?" Ellie whispered, her eyes darting nervously between the stones. "I don't know," Sarah breathed, stepping closer. The stones seemed to pulsate, throbbing softly like a heartbeat, resonating with her own. A wrenching sense of wrongness engulfed her. Was this a place of sacrifice? A meeting point for something old and sinister? Then, the growls returned, deeper and closer. With every passing second, the weight of dread ensnared her thoughts. They were being pulled toward those stones, beckoned by an unseen force, drawing them into a trap. "Run!" she shouted, her voice tearing through the air, slicing through the suffocating silence. They dashed back into the trees, the laughter morphing into an anguished wail that echoed in the night. The woods erupted into chaos as branches snapped and shadows danced menacingly. Every step felt like an eternity, the air thickening with panic. "Mommy!" Jake cried, as behind them, something burst forth from the underbrush, fast and monstrous. Sarah turned, adrenaline propelling her forward, but it was too late. As she pushed her children ahead, she felt the presence close in, an icy breath on her neck, the whisper of her name reiterated through the dark. What was hunting them, and why were they drawn to that cursed clearing? Would they survive the night, or would the darkness claim them as its own? In the dim murmur of the night, a final question echoed in her mind: who were the real hunters here? They ran, branches whipping past like ghostly hands trying to hold them back. The laughter pulsated in their ears, a taunting reminder of what they were escaping, what they still couldn't see. Heart pounding, Sarah steeled herself, her instincts screaming to keep her children safe. "Faster," she urged, her voice a desperate pitch. Ellie's small feet stumbled over roots, and Jake lagged behind, his breath coming in short bursts. "Mommy, I can't," just a little further. Sarah shot back, forcing her legs to move, desperation fueling her pace. The darkness swirled around them, thick and suffocating, pressing against a frantic, racing heart. Suddenly, they broke through the dense trees into another clearing, this one larger but just as ominous, the ground littered with dead leaves, damp and rotting. But something in this new space lifted Sarah's spirits. Walls of an ancient stone structure emerged, towering and twisted, almost as if they had grown out from the earth itself. "Look, we can hide in there," she said, gesturing towards a gaping archway. "Is it safe?" Jake asked, terror etched on his face. "I don't know, but we don't have a choice." They rushed forward, barely glancing back. Inside, shadows danced along the stone walls, flickering like candlelight. It felt like the belly of a beast, cold and inhospitable. A musty smell filled the air, mingling with an unmistakable sense of dread. As they settled into a small corner, trying to catch their breath, they could hear the outside world shifting. The laughter muted to an eerie silence. Shadows flickered just beyond the archway, and Sarah dared to peek out. Nothing. Just darkness, but it felt alive, pulsating with a heartbeat of its own. "Mommy, I feel weird," Ellie whispered, her small face pale. Sarah turned to her daughter, hands trembling. "It's okay. Just focus on me. I won't let anything happen to you." That was a lie. A cold sweat trickled down her spine, she had no idea how to protect them against whatever hunted them. Then the ground beneath them trembled, a low rumble that resonated through the stones, as if the very walls were warning them to leave. "Mommy, what's that?" Jake squeaked, his eyes bulging. "Shoo!" she hissed, straining to listen. The trembling intensified, and with it came a chorus of whispers. They were back, creeping into her mind, filling it with chilling words. Join us, no. Sarah snapped, pressing her hands against her ears. The structure shuddered violently now. Dust fell from the ceilings as if trying to shake loose the very memories trapped within its walls. Ellie and Jake clung to her, their small bodies trembling. "Mommy, we have to go," Ellie cried, panic rising in her voice. "Not yet, we need to wait for it to pass," Sarah said, even as the shadows deepened, forming shapes that flickered at the edge of her vision. She could almost see faces twisted in torment, waiting expectantly as if they had a purpose and unfulfilled need, but then, the heartbeat quickened. The whispers turned into screams, a furious cacophony reverberating through the stone. "Run!" Sarah yelled, her instinct kicking in again. They rushed out of the archway and were met with the clutches of shadows, black tendrils reaching for them. As they sprinted, something fast grazed Sarah's arm, ice cold, piercing. She stumbled, nearly losing her footing. Panic struck her heart like a lightning bolt. "Get up! Keep going!" She urged her children, a mixture of urgency and dread echoing through her words. The woods loomed ahead, and as they approached, the laughter returned, closer and more consuming. Yet now she could also hear another sound, a child's giggle intermingled with the cacophony, sending chills racing down her spine. Whose child? Did they belong to the woods? What had become of those who wandered here before? Desperate and breathless, they pressed on. The trees closed in, but Sarah's gaze caught a glimpse of a figure standing still, shrouded in the shadows just ahead. "Who's there?" she shouted, her voice shaking. No answer came. As they neared, Sarah's heart plummeted. The figure was unmistakable, another mother, her eyes hollow, skin gray and drawn tight against fragile bones. Was she trapped here too? "Help me," the ghostly figure whispered, reaching out with skeletal fingers. In that moment, Sarah wrestled with terror and compassion. The danger was evident, yet the plea for help rang in her ears. Was this the way to salvation or another trap? A single thought raced through her mind: who would she become if she reached out to save this lost soul? As darkness encroached, Sarah knew they couldn't wait much longer. Would the shadowy woods consume them all? The chilling reality set in: who were the true victims here? The night surged around them like a drowning tide, heavy with dread and shadows that clawed at Sarah and her children. They were encased in a world gone mad, where echoes of confusion and terror wrapped around them tighter than the darkness. "Go!" she urged, her voice barely a whisper but filled with desperation. Ellie and Jake clung to her, small and vulnerable against the vast unknown. The woods swirled with movement as if sentient, branches snapping and rustling with sinister laughter. "We'll find our way home," Sarah promised, though doubt knotted in her stomach. The pulse of danger echoed with every heartbeat, a crescendo that demanded they flee. With the right mix of instinct and fear, they ran deeper into the trees, the earth beneath their feet a living entity, threatening to swallow them whole. Dark silhouettes flitted between branches, taunting them as the path twisted and turned, winding toward a fate unseen. Suddenly, a grating growl surged across the air, amplifying the tension as it converged with their racing hearts. "Mommy!" Jake's small voice squeaked, fraught with fear. "It's behind us." Sarah didn't dare look back. They surged forward, each footfall pounding into the ashen ground, urging them to escape the horrors hot on their heels. "There!" Sarah cried, spotting an overgrown path, barely visible through the dense underbrush. "This way!" She dove into the thicket, pulling her children along as branches clawed at their clothes and the laughter of shadows echoed behind them. The darkness thickened around them, and with every step, she fought against an overwhelming urge to turn back to confront whatever haunted them. In a clearing, an ancient stone archway loomed ahead, dormant and foreboding. It felt charged, like stepping into a portal of forgotten history. "We can't stop now," she breathed, urging them forward, her pulse a frantic rhythm of fear. But as they reached the arch, a thunderous roar erupted around them, a force shaking the very earth beneath their feet. The patience of the woods had faded, it was growing restless. "Mommy! Please!" Ellie cried, choking back tears as the archway's shadows elongated, twisting like serpents eager to ensnare its prey. "I want to go home." "Me too, honey," Sarah murmured, her heart aching for comfort she couldn't provide. Yet she felt it then, a small glimmer in the suffocating darkness, a reminder of her fierce love that illuminated the void. "Stay close," she instructed, gripping her children's hands tightly. The laughter grew louder, but Sarah pushed forward, squeezing between the archway's stone edges, and into the center of the clearing surrounded by jagged rocks. The air crackled, heavy with something ancient and wicked, as though they had crossed into another realm. "Mommy!" Jake yelped as the shadows roared back, screeching in delight. Just then, a blinding flash erupted before them. The silhouette of a monstrous figure stepped into view, its features twisting and contorting, resembling something familiar yet entirely foreign, an apparition of their nightmares made real. "Join us," the voice mimicked, echoing with silky malice. "No!" Sarah shouted, forcing herself to her feet, forcing her children to march toward the light that seemed to beckon from within. "This isn't you." The entity lunged, and with a feral shriek, it tore toward them. But somehow, fueled by love and sheer determination, Sarah felt the shadows recoil at her defiance. "Get behind me," she commanded, a fiery resolve igniting her spirit. She took a deep breath, stepping forward, confronting the apparition head-on. "You don't belong to this world. You're nothing without fear to feed you. We are stronger." As her voice rang out through the haze, the dark entity wavered, sputtering and dimming in the face of her conviction. The swirling shadows hesitated, caught in a moment of vulnerability, and Sarah seized the opportunity, picking up a nearby stone. "Let my children go," she yelled, slamming the stone into the concrete floor. A shockwave pulsed outward, the very air quaking as if acknowledging her resolve. The shadows recoiled. Again, and with a final shattering shriek, they dissipated into 1,000 wisps of smoke, a dark echo consuming itself. She opened her eyes, gripping her children a shade tighter before slowly releasing them. The night felt still now, almost serene. Clarity washed over Sarah, filling her with strength as she turned to her kids, their wide eyes reflecting pure fear. "Are we safe, Mommy?" Ellie asked, uncertainty still clinging to her voice. "Yes, my love," Sarah replied, a smile breaking free like dawn through the night. "We've faced the darkness together, and we are stronger. We'll find our way home." They began to step forward, hand in hand, navigating the path that wove back through the trees. The air felt lighter, lighter than it had in what felt like an eternity. With each step they reclaimed pieces of themselves lost to fear, stitching together the fabric of their reality once again. As they broke through the edge of the woods, the familiar sight of their home emerged, glowing beneath the moonlight. The shadows receded, whispering from the distance but no longer holding weight over their hearts. "We did it!" Jake shouted joyfully, his eyes bright. "Yes, we did," Sarah confirmed, squeezing them close. Together. They walked up to their front door, a sanctuary at last. With trembling hands, Sarah turned the handle, welcoming the warm light that flooded the space. As the door creaked open, it felt like redemption. This was their home, their haven. Left behind were the fears that threatened to consume them. Their laughter rang through the silence, merging with the memory of a night that would forever haunt them yet now held a promise of resilience and family. "Mommy, does it know we're home?" Ellie questioned, glancing back toward the trees. "No. It's just a whisper now." With that, Sarah stepped inside, closing the door solidly behind them. They were safe, they were free, and darkness would never claim them again. Feeling that spark of survival, she hugged her children tighter. They were family, untouchable by the shadows, and she felt hope filling the cracks, illuminating their new beginning. Deep inside the woods, the shadows shifted, whispering a reminder of the night's horrors. But for Sarah and her family, a new dawn had broken. They would face whatever came next, together. Now is your time to act. Don't miss out on more thrilling stories like this. Subscribe immediately to our channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm and help others find these stories. Flood the comments with your reactions and theories about what you just watched. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand just how important your support is.